Cece, my name's Nicole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night because we were out of town together, and we were on the way back from the airport, and she's having issues, and she's pregnant, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning, and I've gone to her house, and her car's there, and stuff like that, but she won't answer the door, she won't answer phone calls, she won't answer text messages. And I'm just really, really concerned. And she had a doctor's appointment this morning, and she didn't go to it. And I don't know what to do. I've called him and talked to him, and he said that she went on a play date with her other two daughters. But, like, if she went on a play date, they're both in car seats. Why would she not take her car?
Perfectly understandable. Do you happen to know her address, Nicole?
I'm asking to send it up at the house. It's 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick. And then I said, like, Chris, can you just come home and check to make sure she's okay? Because the shoes she wears every single day are right inside her door. And he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 3 minutes. Well, that was 45 minutes ago. And I called him and asked him again, can you please come home? And he's like, I'm 45 minutes out.
Okay. Nicole, I'll go ahead and call in. I just need you, if you could please repeat her address to make sure I have it entered correctly.
2825 Saratoga. It's Saratogatr.
Okay.
The thing stands for trail.
Thank you. And can I get a phone number that you're calling me from? Area code first.
970.
Thank you. Okay, Nicole, tell me exactly what happened.
So, we were out of town for work, and we flew in last night. Our flight got delayed, and I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and she was very, like, distraught and out of the sorts because her and her husband are having issues. So she was concerned because she wasn't, like, eating or drinking and stuff like that. So then this morning, I was like, let me know if you need me to take you to your doctor's appointment because you're not feeling well. And I have called and texted. I've come to her house. She's not answering the door. She's not responding to text messages, phone calls. I've had other friends reach out to her. None of us can get her to respond to us. They have two little girls that are 3 and 4. I mean, there's no movement in the house whatsoever. And he states that she didn't take them to daycare and was going to go on a play date, but they're both in car seats and her car is here.
What's her name?
It's in the garage. And I'm like, well, huh?
What's her name?
Shanann Watts. It's SHANANN Watts, WATTS.
Do you know her date of birth or how old she might be?
Oh, if you would have asked me that, I would know it.
That's okay. If you just know her approximate age,
She's in her early 30s.
Bear with me here one moment. When was the last time that you heard from her?
When I dropped her off at her house, I watched her, made sure she got in the house. That was at 2 a.m. It was actually 1:55. I literally lived like 5-10 minutes from her.
And her vehicle is it parked in the garage?
Yes. It's a white Lexus. And I probably, because I was concerned, I know I don't want to get a doctor's office in trouble, but I went to the doctor's office because I've been used them as doctors, and I said, I know you can't give me things because of HIPAA, but can you just tell me if she showed up at her appointment this morning? And the lady was like, no, she did not.
Okay. Is that's unusual behavior for her to not show up to her doctor's appointment?
No. Okay. No. Pregnancy, like, she was so excited and then got blindsided from her husband that he wanted to separate a week ago.
And her husband's name is Chris?
Yes, his name is Chris Watts.
And he told you that she went on a play date today with
the girls.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're 4-year-old, and she told me last night when we were driving home, she's like, the morning's going to suck because I have to take the girls to daycare tomorrow. And I I made the statement, well, you could keep him home with you. And she was like, no, that'd be more exhausting. She was like, I have to get up and take him because I have a doctor's appointment at 9.
Bear with me here one moment. I'm just typing this information in the call here.
And I'm not trying to cause problems more between them. I just want to know she's okay.
Okay. What's her phone number?
Give me 1 second and I'll look it up for you. It is 910-850-3286.
Okay. And Chris told you that he was on his way.
Yes, I just talked to him. Well, I talked to him here. One of our other friends did via text because I was going to the doctor's office, and she said he would be here in about 30 minutes, and that was at 1:08. And then I called him and said, Chris, I'm at your house. I'm not trying to cause drama or anything. I just need to know your life, okay? I was like, where are you? And he was like, I'm on I-70. I'm about a half hour to 45 minutes out. And I just said, okay, and then I hung up and called you guys because I'm just worried.
Okay, Nicole, what kind of vehicle are you in right now?
I'm in a white Dodge Dart.
Okay. Alrighty, we do have a call in, Nicole. We'll have an officer come out that way as soon as we can. I would just advise you, to not try to make entry into the house or anything like that until the officers can get there. In the meantime, if you do hear from her, just give us a call back and let us know, okay?
Okay.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
2825 Saratoga Trail of a party who's checking on a friend who's pregnant who's not answering the door.
What if I told you that a man stood on his front lawn in broad daylight, smiled at a camera, and begged the entire world to help him find his missing wife and daughters? And that by the time he opened his mouth to speak those words, he already knew exactly where they were. What if I told you that while police officers were standing inside his home, walking through his hallways, opening his doors, his phone rang, and the person calling him was the very reason his family was gone? What if I told you that one woman made a 911 call that cracked this case wide open, and another woman sat in a police interview room and unknowingly handed investigators the final pieces of the puzzle? And what if I told you that a 4-year-old little girl, in her final moments on this earth, asked her own father a question so haunting that it broke even the most seasoned investigators in that room when they heard it years later? This is not just a story about a man who took 3 lives. This is a story about the layers of deception that nearly let him walk away. It is a story about the tiny cracks in a carefully built lie. Cracks so small that most people would have missed them, and the people who didn't. This is the story of the Watts family. And once you hear everything, you will never look at a perfect family the same way again. Welcome to Dark Trail Files. Before we go any further, if you're new here, let me tell you what this channel is about. Dark Trail Files is not about shock. It is not about rumors. It is not about speculation. Every case we cover on this channel is researched, fact-checked, and told with the level of depth that these stories demand. We do not cut corners. We do not leave details out. And we never, ever tell half a story. If that is the kind of true crime content you have been looking for, then this channel was built for you. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on your notifications. Because the cases we cover here are the ones that stay with you. The ones that make you ask questions. The ones that make you look differently at the world around you. You do not want to miss a single one. Now, let's go back to Frederick, Colorado. Let's go back to a house on Saratoga Trail. Let's go back to a family that, from the outside, looked like everything most people dream of. Because the truth of what happened inside those walls is one of the most disturbing, most documented, and most psychologically complex cases in recent American history. And we're going to cover every single detail. To understand what happened on August 13th, 2018, you first have to understand who Shanann Watts was. Shanann Catherine Zusek was born on January 10th, 1984, in Aberdeen, North Carolina. She was warm. She was loud in the best possible way. The kind of person who filled every room she walked into. She battled lupus, a chronic autoimmune condition, and she did not hide it. She spoke openly about it on social media, because for Shanann, vulnerability was never a weakness. It was connection. She met Christopher Lee Watts, born May 16th, 1985, in Spring Lake, North Carolina, through mutual connections, and they married on November 3rd, 2012, in Mecklenburg County. They moved to Frederick, Colorado, and purchased a 5-bedroom home at 2825 Saratoga Trail in 2013. From the outside, everything about them looked like the blueprint for a happy life. Shanann posted constantly on social media. Videos of the girls laughing, updates on her pregnancy, family moments that felt almost too wholesome to be real. Their daughters were the center of her world. Bella Marie Watts was born December 17th, 2013. She was 4 years old when she died. Celeste Catherine Watts, Cece, as she was called, was born July 17th, 2015. She was 3, and in the spring of 2018, Shanann found out she was pregnant again. A boy. They had already named him Nico Lee Watts. He was 15 weeks along when his mother was taken from this world. Shanann filmed the moment, she told Chris. She set up a camera in the kitchen, wore a shirt that read, "Oops, we did it again," and watched his face when he saw the pregnancy test in her hand. He kissed her. He grinned. He said, on camera, "I guess when you want it, it happens." Wow, that video still exists. That moment still exists on the internet. And 76 days after that footage was filmed, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico were all gone. But here's what the world did not know while all of those happy videos were being posted. Here is what the carefully curated social media pages did not show. The Watts family had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2015, claiming nearly $450,000 in liabilities. Their combined income was roughly $90,000, but their $3,000 mortgage, $600 monthly car payments, and other financial pressures were crushing them. Their homeowners association had sued them for unpaid fees. Shanann was working hard as a distributor for Lavelle, a nutritional supplement company, and her online presence was central to her income. Behind the smiles, the marriage was fracturing. Friends of Shanann had begun hearing things that worried them. Shanann herself had started confiding in her closest friends about the emotional distance she felt growing between her and Chris. She texted one friend, "He has changed. I don't know who he is." She texted another and said she was wondering if she needed to fight for full custody of the girls if things fell apart. She ordered a relationship book from Amazon called Hold Me Tight, and Chris threw it in the garbage without ever opening the cover. What neither she nor her friends knew was the reason why. By the time the summer of 2018 arrived, Christopher Watts was living two lives. On one side was the suburban husband and father, the man who showed up in Shanann's Facebook videos, who helped with the girls, who wore the face of a devoted family man. On the other side was something he had been building quietly, carefully, and deliberately since mid-June of 2018. Her name was Nicole Kessinger. She worked in the environmental department at Anadarko Petroleum, the same company where Chris worked as a field operator. They met in the middle of June when Chris walked into her office to introduce himself. She later told police he was soft-spoken, a good listener. She noticed he did not wear a wedding ring. He told her he was separated. He told her the divorce was nearly done. He told her his wife had agreed it was over. Every single one of those statements was a lie. Within weeks, they were seeing each other 4 and 5 times a week. On July 4th, Kessinger visited the family home for the first time, the same home where Shanann and the girls lived. Their first recorded phone call was July 7th. By late July, while Shanann and the girls were visiting family in North Carolina, Chris took Nicole on a romantic overnight stay at the Great Sand Dunes National Park. He even sent Shanann a love note before flying out to join his family. A note to a woman he was simultaneously betraying and a woman he was simultaneously telling another woman he had already divorced. While Chris was in North Carolina with his family, Nicole Kessinger was at home searching Google. Phone data later recovered by investigators showed that as early as July 24th, Kessinger had searched the phrase, "Man I'm having affair with says he will leave his wife." She had searched the term, "marrying your mistress." And on August 4th at 12:45 in the morning, for over 2 hours, she searched for wedding dresses online. That detail is important. Not because it makes Kessinger a villain in this story, but because it shows how completely and convincingly Chris Watts had manufactured a false reality. One so believable that a woman was already dreaming about a future with him, while his wife was simultaneously drafting a heartfelt letter to him, hoping to save their marriage. Shanann returned to Colorado on August 9th to prepare for one final business trip. Before she left, she told friends that she and Chris had their best talk yet. She was hopeful. She wrote him a letter by hand. On August 11th, with Shanann gone to Arizona and the girls at home, Chris hired a babysitter, told her he was going to watch a Colorado Rockies game with coworkers, and instead took Nicole Kessinger to a bar in Erie, Colorado. 2 nights later, Shanann would walk back through the front door of that house for the last time. Think about this. At 1:48 in the morning on August 13th, 2018, a neighbor's security camera recorded Shanann Watts arriving home. Nicole Atkinson, her friend and colleague who had traveled with her to Arizona, drove her home and watched until she was safely inside. Atkinson later told investigators she waited until Shanann was in. She watched the door close. She drove away thinking everything was fine. She had no way of knowing she was the last person to see Shanann Watts alive. According to Chris Watts' later confessions, and he gave multiple versions of this story, each one more carefully adjusted than the last. When Shanann arrived, he was awake, getting ready for work. He said she initiated intimacy when she got home, and then they slept for a little while. Then, he said, he woke her up to tell her the marriage was over. He said he told her about Nicole Kessinger. He said Shanann's response was that he would never see the children again, and then he strangled her. According to the confession he gave from prison in February 2019, a 5-hour interview with FBI agents, CBI investigators, and Frederick police. Watts said he did not know he was going to do it before he did it. He said, "Every time I think about it, I'm just like, did I know I was going to do that before I got on top of her?" He said it felt like something in his head had already decided. He said he had no control. Investigators did not buy it, because what happened next was not impulsive. What happened next was calculated, cold, and deliberate in a way that makes the word rage feel deeply inadequate. After Shanann was gone, he wrapped her body in a bed sheet. He carried her to his truck, and then he went back into the house to get his daughters. Bella woke up. She came out of her room. She asked her father what was wrong with Mommy. Chris Watts put his daughters in the back seat of his truck. He drove approximately 45 minutes to a remote oil work site operated by Anadarko Petroleum, the Survey 319 site. He smothered 3-year-old Celeste in the back seat of that truck and placed her body into a crude oil storage tank, the opening of which was only 8 inches in diameter. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave in the dirt nearby. And then he smothered 4-year-old Bella. But Bella fought. Autopsy results later confirmed defensive wounds on Bella's body, evidence that she did not go without a fight. And in the prison interview in 2019, when investigators pressed Chris Watts about those final moments with his daughter, he revealed something that stopped everyone in that room. He said that Bella looked at him and asked, "Is the same thing going to happen to me as what happened to Cece?" That question, from a 4-year-old to her own father, that is the question that should define everything else you hear in this video. He put her body in a second oil tank. He drove back home. He loaded a gas can into the bed of his truck. He walked around his neighborhood. He backed the truck into the garage. He went inside. He stripped the sheets off the bed. He threw them in the kitchen trash. And then Christopher Watts went to work, just like any other day. Here is where this story becomes something beyond unsettling. Here is where the dramatic irony becomes almost unbearable to sit with. While Chris Watts was at work on the morning of August 13th, while he was driving across oil fields in his company truck, while he was answering calls and making plans, Nicole Atkinson was at home, texting her friend. Shanann had a scheduled obstetrics appointment that morning. She was 15 weeks pregnant. She never missed doctor's appointments. She was meticulous about her health. Nicole texted. No response. She called. No answer. She waited. She texted again. Nothing. By 12:10 in the afternoon, Nicole Atkinson drove to the Watts house on Saratoga Trail. She rang the doorbell. She knocked. She could see Shanann's car, still parked in the garage. Shanann's phone, her keys, and her purse were all inside. You do not leave your phone, your keys, your purse, and your car behind when you take your kids to a friend's house. Nothing about this made sense. Nicole Atkinson called Chris at work. He said, calmly, that Shanann had mentioned going to a friend's place with the kids. He said it was vague. He sounded unconcerned. And then Nicole Atkinson called 911. That 911 call is one of the most important pieces of audio in this entire case. It set everything in motion. As you listen, pay attention to the urgency in Nicole Atkinson's voice. The urgency of a woman who knew in her gut that something was wrong, even before she had a single piece of evidence to prove it. A Frederick police officer arrived at the home at approximately 1:40 in the afternoon to conduct a welfare check. Chris Watts had been called and was now there himself. He gave the officer permission to search the house. The family dog, Dieter, was found safe inside, but there was no sign of Shanann, no sign of Bella, no sign of Celeste, no sign of Nico. And standing there in the middle of his house, while an officer walked through his rooms, was Christopher Watts. Calm, cooperative, answering questions. Here is something remarkable about this early moment in the case. While Chris Watts was calmly fielding questions inside, Nicole Atkinson was outside, speaking with another officer. And in those early minutes, Atkinson told investigators things about Shanann, about her character, her routines, her relationship, that would quietly begin to point in one very specific direction. Watch how much information she carries in this moment, and how clearly she already believes something is not right.
Hey, Ben.
Hi.
Here, Nicole?
Yes.
Okay, so what's going on?
So my friend, we were out of town for a business trip this weekend.
Right.
And I dropped her off at 2 o'clock this morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant. She wasn't feeling well. And she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9, and I told her to let me know if she needed me to take her. She's got 2 little girls. Her husband and her supposedly are separating, but she didn't know this. She thought they were just having issues. I called him, and I was like, have you talked or heard from Shanann since she left for work this morning? Because I can't get a hold of her. I called, I texted. Her car's in the garage. Her shoes she wears every single day are by the front door.
She only has one vehicle?
No, they only have the one vehicle in his work truck.
Okay. Shanann, are you home? Police department, if anyone's inside, make yourself known. Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything out of place. I'm not hearing kids. I'm not hearing anything. Scott, how you doing?
How's it going?
So this is the only vehicle she would have?
Only one that
She would drive? Okay.
What's interesting is the garage door opens, and instead of yelling out for Shanann, he stops and opens up their car and starts looking through the car.
This is a stalling tactic to kind of gather his thoughts up a little bit.
He then walks in the house and is never heard calling their names, as if he knows they're not home. He goes in the house, he's in there for about a minute by himself, nobody goes in with him.
Can we go in the house?
I mean, that's up to him. It's his house. Because
And that's when he comes around and politely lets in the police officer, Nicole Atkinson, and her son.
mind if I come in, Chris? Okay.
They go upstairs, there's no sign of the girls there. They go in the basement, there's no sign of Shanann or the girls.
her phone.
Her phone's here?
Yeah.
Her phone's here.
Does she work?
Yeah, she works from home.
Oh, from home?
She works This Is Her Lifeline.
This could be the ticket to all the information, like she left the phone behind. But here's the other thing is that he didn't think that it was odd that the phone was left there.
You know her passcode?
I don't know her passcode.
It used to be 2385 and now it's 6 digits.
It's the baby's due date.
I don't believe Chris had planned to have the phone discovered. I think he planned to come back later and make some changes and do what he had to do to make it look as if Shanann was wandering around with her phone and doing other things.
He seems to be anxious. You can see this rocking movement in his body language.
Because you told me that she went on a play date with the girls and then...
That's what she told me.
But instead of frantically calling around, asking for help, finding his wife, or if anyone's seen her, he's texting people.
He's trying to take attention off of himself, transferring his anxiety onto that phone. Nicole is like a hound dog. She knows something's up. She knows something's off. And she's looking over at Chris going, what the heck is wrong with you?
What time do you leave today?
What time I leave there?
Come there here.
Usually between 5:30 and 6.
Was Shanann here then?
Yes. Yeah, we about that.
At one point, the police officer is asking questions about where they might have been, and Chris conveniently walks straight into the bedroom and comes straight out, and on his finger is Shanann's wedding ring.
And he's pointing it out almost like he's pointing a gun. Here it is. I found the ring. This is the missing evidence.
I still to this day believe that was her wedding ring that he took out of the car.
What's that?
Nothing on there. You just have my camera.
Is this on continually recording?
I get cars driving from this street, and this is him at 517.
It shows Chris very clearly walking out of the house by himself, backing his truck up into the driveway, and then loading something into the back of his truck.
What Chris Watts does, he's very purposeful. He goes into the garage, he walks out, he's got a gas can. He goes to put it on one side of the truck, and then he thinks twice, goes, well, I can't really put it there. But you can see him kind of moving, like apparently there's not room for it there. That wasn't going to fit. Let's go around to the other side. Oh, okay, now it'll fit, obviously, between the three dead bodies.
We usually park out there on the side. I just want to get everything in. Be easier, so lugging everything out there, all the tools that I had to bring in.
Suddenly, this guy who had few words has a lot to say. He has an explanation for everything.
Then Chris started to fall apart a bit.
Chris Watts can barely watch it, right? So what happens when you arrest somebody? Get down on the ground. Put your hands on your head. So he puts his hands on his head, even though he wasn't told. But that was a surrendering moment.
That's almost as if Chris was verbally saying, oh my gosh, I was not expecting this.
And you see him pacing and moving, nervous and anxious. Chris Watts' body language is betraying him.
So right now, police don't have probable cause to be able to arrest him because it still isn't clear where Shanann, Bella, and Cece went. They're never seen leaving the house.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Hopefully something comes up here. I've never seen him. If he loads his stuff, he normally just walks back and forth because I get him on camera. But the fact that he was in here and explaining to it over and over and over,
Well,
he doesn't look worried. He looks like he's trying to cover his tracks.
There's a phrase that investigators use. It is called behavioral evidence. It does not always show up in a forensic report. It shows up in a pause before an answer. It shows up in a smile that arrives too quickly. It shows up in words that are technically correct, but emotionally empty. And on August 13th and 14th, 2018, Christopher Watts was producing behavioral evidence at a remarkable rate. He just did not know it yet. When police searched the house that afternoon, Chris gave them what seemed like helpful cooperation. He explained that Shanann had been away on a business trip and had come home in the early hours. He said she told him she was going to a friend's house with the girls. He said it was vague. He kept using the word vague. He said he just went to work. But here is what was happening simultaneously behind that cooperative exterior that the cameras and the officers in that house could not see. Earlier that morning, before Nicole Atkinson had even made that 911 call, Chris Watts had already contacted his daughter's school, the Primrose School, and told an administrator the girls would not be coming back. He had also called a real estate agent named in Meadows with the intention of selling the family home. He had discussed downsizing. He told the realtor he would drive past a potential new property on his way home from work that day. His wife and daughters had been missing for hours, and he was already making plans to sell the house and shrink his life. What you are about to watch is arguably one of the most chilling pieces of footage in this entire case. Officers are inside the Watts home, conducting what appears to be a routine welfare check. And Chris Watts is right there with them, walking through his own house, answering questions. On the surface, he looks cooperative. But if you watch carefully, if you listen to the specific words he chooses, the moments he pauses, the things he volunteers versus the things he avoids, you'll start to feel it. Something is off. Watch his face. Watch his hands. Watch the gap between what he says and what his body is doing.
All right. We'll have you sign a consent form. We just want to see if you left a note or anything inconspicuous, something like that.
All right.
So if you're good with that, we'll have you sign a consent form allowing us to search your house, and we'll wait for our sergeant to get here. But we'll grab that. You don't plan on going anywhere, right?
No, I was just going to walk around the neighborhood just to clear my head.
Okay. Which company do you work for?
Anadarko.
Anadarko. What do you do for them?
Operator.
So you work like 7 days a week?
5 and 2, like Monday through Friday. I'm doing 8 and 6 next month.
Okay. So today is Monday?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Let us grab that form, and then we'll wait for our supervisor, and then you can either stay here or you can go walk the neighborhood, whatever you'd like. While we look through it. All right. Let's go grab that form. We'll be right back with you, okay?
You have to stay here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Got one?
I think so. So Chris, it's your house. You can go inside with us if you'd like, or you could stay out here. It doesn't matter to us.
Doesn't matter. I mean, free reign, just whatever you got to do.
Okay.
Like I can chill on the decks on the side of the sun. But
okay.
Cool.
All right. Whatever you'd like. How long have you guys been married?
So, we've been together 8 years, married 6 this year.
Okay. And this is very unusual behavior?
Yeah, we can get that dog out of here.
Okay.
She's gonna flip.
On the counter right here.
Okay. So when you guys come home, do you usually use the front door or the garage door? How do you guys?
I usually open the garage door, come in.
Okay.
She uses front or garage. It just kind of depends.
Okay. Is that a ring out there?
Oh, that was.
No, the doorbell, is that a ring doorbell?
Yeah, like when you got a visitor, it does. But I don't think the speaker is on to where you hear it. Like by.
Okay. I guess my question for you is, would it show her leaving with the kids? Did you have any alerts?
If she came out here, yes. Like if.
Did you have any alerts today with that?
Just when her friends were here.
Does it only record when the doorbell rings, or anytime someone?
If you're like right here, it should just start. The proximity should hit up.
Okay. And if you had anything on that today?
Just her friends.
And what time was that?
12:10 and about 2 minutes afternoon.
Okay. But nothing between the time when she got here.
No, like she got here at 2. Only thing
this morning?
Yeah, 2 o'clock this morning.
Okay.
Like 1:48 on here. And the only thing that was weird was that the garage door said it was left open after I left. And it might have been the sensor, but like my phone doesn't show when
For your alarm?
Yeah, it doesn't show if it shuts.
And who's your alarm through?
Vivid.
Okay.
But Nikki, her friend that came here about 12:10, she said the garage door was shut when she got here.
Okay.
That was the only thing that was weird.
All right. Were you going to hang out there, or you want to come in here?
I'll start here.
Okay. Where's the purse at?
On the counter.
I'm still recording, so.
Yep.
Whose phone is that?
I believe that is his. Bomb overtook hers. That's vomiting.
Is that a diary, or what is that?
It's for work, I believe. I was thinking it was possibly a diary, but it's talking about like motivation stuff.
How did you say the kids were?
Forest.
This is very neat for having two little kids.
That same evening, Chris Watts appeared in a televised interview with Denver 7 reporter Tomas Hopup. He stood on his front lawn, and he said, looking directly into the camera, "Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, please come back. If somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here." Body language experts who later analyzed that footage noted something deeply unsettling. There were micro-expressions of what analysts identified as contempt, a barely visible, fleeting curl at the corner of the mouth. There was inappropriate smiling. There were speech patterns that did not align with what genuine distress looks like in a person who has lost their family. He spoke fluently. He was not trembling. He did not break down. He was performing concern. And the performance, while convincing to some, was already raising flags among those trained to notice. A Colorado Bureau of Investigation agent named Tammy Lee watched that interview and, according to reports, wanted Chris Watts in an interrogation room immediately. But that was not all that was happening in that 24-hour window. Here is a detail that does not get nearly enough attention. While Frederick police officers were walking through the Watts home on the afternoon of August 13th, while they were conducting that welfare check, while they were looking in closets, and talking to Chris about where Shanann might have gone, Chris Watts' phone rang. It was Nicole Kessinger. Earlier that morning, Chris had already texted Kessinger. He told her his family was gone. He said Shanann had taken the girls on a play date and they had not come back. Something immediately felt off to Kessinger, even through a text message. And then he called her that afternoon and asked if they could FaceTime. She said the conversation made her uncomfortable. She said she noticed the sheets were missing from his bed. She had seen his bedroom on the FaceTime call, and the bare mattress unsettled her. She said he seemed fixated on her in a way that felt strange, given that his family was supposed to be missing. This is the moment that, when investigators eventually pieced it together, made their understanding of Chris Watts shift completely. Right here, in this footage, police are in his home. They're literally standing in the house where his family's disappearance is being investigated, and his phone rings. And who is on the other end of that call reveals everything about the world Chris Watts had built and the world he was trying to run toward. Watch his demeanor. Watch how he handles this moment.
There's a driveway from the townhomes that backs right up to our fence.
Now, would you think that's a female friend or a male friend?
Honestly, I'm not going to put anything by it right now.
All right. Well, we appreciate you letting us go through your house.
No problem. I'm
definitely not in there.
No. Hey, hold on one second. Call you back. Bye.
Was it in the car? So she came out the door then?
Yeah. Chris said things, you know. What's your name again?
I'm Sergeant Bakes.
Sergeant Bakes.
Good to meet you.
So she doesn't have any family or anyone around here?
Neither of us do. They're all back in North Carolina. We moved here back in 2012. Came out here to visit some friends during Thanksgiving, fell in love with the place, moved out here a few months later.
Does she have any friends around here?
Just for friends?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got friends in Frederick, Erie, Aurora, that part of Erie, Broomfield, Parker.
Have you tried to contact any of them?
Oh yeah, we've exhausted every option. The last thing I'm going to do is hospitals. Hotels. There's so many, but...
And no one's heard from her today? Have you checked your bank accounts?
That's another thing I was going to do, because I don't have access through here.
Let's go check those and see if she pulled any cash out, or if there's any strange charges or anything.
Okay.
Can you log?
I can't log in because she does all the finances.
Okay.
So I know her password. I just don't have her used already. Not sure what she would have used that way. Sorry, my phone's just blowing up.
No, you're fine. Who do you guys bank through?
USAA and Chase.
Can you call them and see if there's been any activity? Any withdrawals or anything? And then the suitcases that she came home this morning with, which ones were those? Was it
The black one that's sitting right there.
Not the one in the bedroom?
That was from the last trip, or when we just got back a few days ago from North Carolina. She went to Arizona like 2 days later. That was when we just got put back down in the basement.
You guys don't have any stockpiles of cash or anything in the house that she would have had? If she needed cash, she needed to go to the bank to get it?
If there is, I would not know about it. If there was, I didn't know.
You know how much cash she usually carries with her?
It's usually not, maybe like 100.
Your turn signal's on.
It's been on. I may have to turn in a hurry.
By the evening of August 14th, a neighbor invited Chris and a police officer to review the security footage from the home next door. That footage captured the moment at 5:15 in the morning, the truck backing into the garage, the gas can being loaded, the movements of a man doing things that had no innocent explanation. Chris Watts had told police he left for work at 5:15 to 5:30 that morning. He said Shanann and the girls were alive when he left. But the security footage showed a man loading things into a truck in the dark. And if Shanann and the girls were already gone, which is what Chris had implied, why was he loading anything at all? Why was he backing the truck into the garage rather than out of it? The footage proves something that would later be confirmed in court. Shanann Watts never left that house on the morning of August 13th with her daughters. She never walked out of that front door. The last time anyone other than Chris Watts saw her alive was when Nicole Atkinson watched her go inside at 1:48 in the morning. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation issued an endangered missing alert for Shanann and the girls. And investigators began quietly, methodically pulling phone records, computer records, and search histories. What they found in those records would become the architecture of the case against Christopher Watts. This is the part of the story that makes this case unlike almost any other. Because there were two women named Nicole at the center of what happened next, and both of them, in entirely different ways, brought Chris Watts closer to the truth. Nicole Atkinson, with AK, was the one who made the call that started it all. She was Shanann's friend, her colleague, her travel companion. She was the last person to see Shanann alive. And on the afternoon of August 13th, she sat outside that house and told officers everything she knew about Shanann's state of mind, her marriage, her fears. She said Shanann had been concerned. She said Shanann had confided in her that something was wrong with Chris. She gave investigators a portrait of a woman who was fighting for her family, not running from it. And then there was Nicole Kessinger, spelled with a CH, who, on August 16th, walked into the Thornton police station and sat down for an interview that lasted nearly 3 hours. She had reached out to investigators herself. She had ended contact with Chris Watts. She was cooperating. And in that 3-hour conversation, she handed investigators something that the district attorney of Weld County would later describe as bombshell information. This recorded interview with Nicole Kessinger is one of the most revealing pieces of footage to come out of this entire case. She is sitting in an interview room. She has come in voluntarily. And as she speaks to investigators, she unknowingly dismantles almost every version of events that Chris Watts had put forward. She also reveals details about what Chris told her, including details that were provably, demonstrably false. Details that made it clear just how completely Chris Watts had been lying to the woman he claimed to love. Watch carefully for the moment when she talks about the pregnancy.
We introduced ourselves in the lobbies and earlier, so we're just going to do that again real quick. My name is Kevin Kovac. I'm with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and we're assisting the Frederick Police Department with this case involving Chris Watts. And this is Tim Martinez, also an agent at CBI. Sir, if you just introduce yourself.
Dwayne Kessinger. I'm Nicole's father.
Dwayne, what's your birthday?
November 3rd, 1958.
And home address for you, sir?
8801 West 65th Avenue.
What city?
And that's Arvada, 8004.
And cell phone or home phone or where?
720-982-4547.
Thank you. And Nicole, can you just introduce yourself for the recording?
Nicole Kessinger. Do you need all the other stuff?
Yes, please.
I live at 12255 Claude Court, Unit 612, phone number 720-656-9605.
Claude Court, is that? I think we determined it was North Glen, right?
Yes.
You know your zip code?
80249.
Okay. Can you speak up just a little bit so the recorder, I know you're tired and you're stressed, and we won't be here any longer than we have to be. You've already had a conversation with people before. You came here on your own free will to talk to us. We picked you up at your request and brought you here. You can get up and leave at any time. You don't have to talk to us. If there's a question you don't want to answer, don't answer it. If you don't want to talk anymore, just tell me I want to leave. And I'm kind of in the way of the door, but you're not being interrogated as a criminal suspect. We're here to understand your relationship with Chris and what you know about Chris and his family and events relating to Chris Watts. And do you know him as Chris or Christopher?
Either one.
Okay. So the phone number that you reached him on, can you tell me what that number was?
I think I deleted that out of my phone too. I just like cut him out of my life. It's a 910 number. You guys have it.
And we gave it to Mark yesterday.
Yeah, I probably have it, but just in case.
I don't have it.
If I recited it to you, would you know it?
Just the first 3 numbers.
But you know it is a 910 number?
Yes, that's what I do know. I mean, that's what I got.
North Carolina or something.
North Carolina. Okay. So let's just start with like a timeline of your getting to know Chris, how you guys met, where you met, all those things. And let's just run. And I'm not going to ask you specific questions unless I think it's necessary. I'll let you just tell me your story. I think it's a little bit easier that way. So I just want to know how you met him, where you met him, how long you guys were dating, and those kind of things initially.
Okay. I think I met him sometime in June, probably early June. It might have been May. It was just talking at work. It was pretty casual. And he didn't have a wedding ring on his finger. And every time I talked to him, he didn't tell me that he was in a relationship. He didn't even mention his kids right away either. And then one day he told me that he had 2 kids. I was like, that's pretty cool. And started telling me about his kids.
That sounded like a sarcastic comment.
No, I thought it was kind of cute. I was like, oh, he's a dad. It was like right around Father's Day too. So whenever that is in June.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm not good with holidays.
And kids, and then it was Father's Day shortly after that. So that's what I do now. And I was like, I thought it was cute. And then he's telling me about him. He's pretty excited about him. And then he mentioned that he did have a significant other. And then he told me that those 2 were in the process of a separation.
Did he mention the children's name or his significant other's name?
I didn't know his significant other's name for a while. And then I think he told me his kids' names pretty quick, but to be honest with you, on an exact date of when that happened, I don't know.
So in May and June, first of all, where do you work?
I work at Anadarko Petroleum Corporation. I'm contracted to Anadarko Petroleum Corporation.
Okay, and you work out of an office setting where?
In Platteville, Colorado.
Okay. And Chris also works out of that location, per se?
Yes. He's in the field, but he comes into the office with his team.
So you work, what is your job responsibility?
I do health, safety, and environment.
Okay, so you work in the office and you take care of health safety for Anadarko is an oil and gas company, right?
Yes.
So you're doing health safety in the office and Chris works in the field?
Yes.
As a, what kind of job does he do?
He's an operator, so I don't know like all of his daily duties, but he's a field operator, so he works with like the oil wells.
So he goes out and does work on those, whatever that work might be, but he comes into the office frequent.
In the mornings, his team meets in the mornings. They're not all in there every day. Some days some of them are in there, some days other ones are in there, but in the mornings typically from like 6:15 to probably 7, somewhere around there.
And is that where you met Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just take us through kind of a little bit of the early part of how he courted you or you courted him? I don't know which one happened. How you guys got to know each other?
I guess we just started talking. He actually, so part of my job is to manage the gas monitors that we have. So Anadarko requires all of their field personnel to carry like gas monitor sensors for toxic gases, and it's my job to control the inventory and issues, anything like that. And we were having some pretty serious like equipment issues, and we had numerous amounts of people coming in my office one day, and he happened to be one of them. And I'd seen him before, like they meet in the lunchroom, and that's where I go put my lunch in the fridge. So I'd seen him, but I didn't ever like talk to him. So that day we just started talking, and then every time I saw him in the hallway.
Here is what came out of that interview. Chris once had told Nicole Kessinger that he had 2 daughters. He had not mentioned that his wife was pregnant. He had told her the marriage was essentially over and the divorce was finalizing. But then, on the morning of August 13th, The morning he says his family disappeared, he told Kessinger that Shanann had confronted him about having an affair, and that during that confrontation, Shanann told him the baby she was carrying was not his. Investigators did not believe that for a moment. Documents released after the sentencing stated it directly. Nicole said he was playing like he did not know Shanann was pregnant, even though she was 15 weeks pregnant. This was a man who had been filmed holding a pregnancy test and kissing his wife and grinning just 76 days earlier. He knew. He had always known. And Kessinger? She said in an interview and later to the Denver Post, "When I read the news, I found out he was still married and his wife was 15 weeks pregnant." She said, "I thought, if he was able to lie to me and hide something that big, what else was he lying about?" That question, Nicole, that question is the entire case. What was remarkable about Kessinger was her candor. She told investigators details that Chris would rather have stayed hidden. She told them about the FaceTime call on August 13th. She told them about the missing sheets. She told them about his fixation on her during a time when his family was supposedly just missing. She also told them about texts she had sent him, asking him directly, "What did you do, Chris? What did you do?" His final reply to her, before all contact was severed, "I love you." The next morning, while Shanann and her daughters were still missing and the world was looking for them, Kessinger went to the police. That night, Chris Watts was arrested. Let us stop here. Let us lay it all out, piece by piece, because this is where the full weight of what Chris Watts did becomes undeniable. This is where every single lie he told begins to collapse under its own impossibility. At 1:48 in the morning on August 13th, the neighbor's security camera captures Shanann arriving home. Chris tells police she came home. They talked. She said she was taking the girls to a friend's house, and she left. He says he went to work at 5:15 to 5:30 in the morning, and she was alive when he left. But the same security camera that recorded Shanann arriving home also captured Chris Watts at 5:15 in the morning, loading items into his truck, backing into the garage, moving in the dark. If Shanann had simply left with the girls, there would be no reason for any of that. No reason to back the truck in. No reason to load anything before dawn. No reason to move a gas can in the middle of the night. At approximately 5:27 in the morning, the home's Vivint security system captured his truck pulling away. Shanann's phone, keys, and purse remained inside the house. Her car remained in the garage. If she had taken the girls somewhere, she would need those things. Every one of them. The girls' school was called and told they would not be returning, before their disappearance was even reported to police. A real estate agent was called to discuss selling the house, before a single officer had knocked on the door. And while Nicole Atkinson was standing outside that house at noon, unable to reach her closest friend, ringing a doorbell and knocking on a door and feeling something rise in her chest that she could not name, Chris Watts was at an oil field. The same oil field where his wife was already in the ground. The same oil field where his daughters were already in the tanks. Every lie he told had a shadow, and every shadow was pointing in the same direction. On August 15th, 2018, Christopher Watts arrived at the police station with his father, Ronnie Watts, who had flown in from North Carolina that same morning. He was there to take a polygraph test. He failed. And when investigators walked back into that room after the results were in, the atmosphere changed. The questions became sharper. The tone shifted. And the man who had been performing grief for 2 days started to feel the ground beneath his story begin to give way. In the interrogation that followed, Watts at first continued to deny involvement. He sat across from investigators and said he did not know where his family was. He spoke about them in the past tense, a detail investigators noted. He denied the affair, even as his phone records and search history were sitting in a folder in front of the people questioning him. Then investigators told him what they had found. The phone records, the Kessinger connection, the security footage, the neighbor's camera, the calls to the school, the call to the real estate agent. And the story changed. Watts' first confession, the one he gave in the interrogation room, was not the truth. It was a modified version of the truth designed to minimize what he had done. He admitted to killing Shanann. He claimed he had done it in a fit of rage after he watched her strangle their daughters. He said he had walked into the girls' room and found her hurting them, and that he had then attacked her. He said he buried Shanann and placed the girls in the tanks, but framed it all as an act of shock and reaction rather than calculation. Investigators did not believe him, and neither did the forensic evidence. The autopsies of Bella and Celeste showed they had been smothered, not strangled, and they had not been smothered in their beds. The evidence suggested they were alive when they left the house. What you're about to watch is the moment in which the performance finally starts crack. For 2 days, Chris Watts had been managing his presentation, choosing words carefully, keeping his expressions controlled, maintaining just enough of a facade to buy himself time. But in this room, under these lights, with these investigators, something starts to give way. Watch for the moment his body language shifts. Watch for the pause that is just a beat too long. Watch for the story that does not hold together, and the investigators who know it.
I brought Graham in here because we want to talk to you about the results, okay? So, it was completely clear that you were not on during the testing, and I think you already know that. You did not pass the polygraph test. Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise. Chris, I never stopped.
Take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath right now.
There's a reason you feel sick to your stomach. And when people hold stuff inside, it makes you physically ill. And I can just tell on your face, I could tell from the second you walked in that you were wanting to just come clean and just be done with this. And I appreciate that because you knew sitting down in that chair that you weren't going to pass today, and you knew I was going to find out because I told you that. And then you continued to stay knowing that you could, at the end, say, you know what, I just need to get this off my chest. Like, I just need to tell you what happened. We're not here to play games. We're not here to do any of that with you. We just want to know what happened. So can you start from the beginning and tell us what happened?
Everything that I have told you, I did not lie on this polygraph. I don't know how much I could tell you right now. Like, I did not.
It's not an option right now because you did not pass the polygraph. I know you were being deceptive, so that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. That's the issue right now.
Good.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I know you want to tell us. I can see it in your face. Holding this lie in is going to do nothing for you.
I know this. Like, okay. I'm not like trying to like cover things up. Like,
yeah, but you kind of are because it's normal. Normal people will do that. Normal people that make a mistake initially are going to go, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. That's normal. I would expect that. It's just like if you ask your kid, did you write on the wall? And they go, no. And you're like, you have marker on your hand. Like, I know you just wrote on the wall. And they're like, oh, okay. That's a natural reaction that someone's going to initially lie about something like that and then eventually tell the truth. So this is your eventually telling the truth time. This is where the rubber meets the road, Chris. Like, don't let this continue any longer, please.
I'm not trying to make anything continue. Like, I want them back home, like.
But you know they're not coming back home. You know they're not.
I don't know them back in my head. I hope they come back home.
But you know they're not.
I hope they come back home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know they're not coming back home. Chris, tell me I'm confused. Okay. And here's what confused about me. I told you that we've done some work overnight. I told you that we booked out a lot of things. Okay, that wasn't a lie. We don't love a lot more than you think we do. Okay. And here's what we're confused. You're this great guy. I'm not just telling you that, okay? I'm telling you that because everyone tells us that. Okay? We can't find anyone to say anything bad about you. Chris is a great guy. He's a good father. He's a good man. We're confused as to why you're not taking care of your beautiful children. I'm not taking care of them right now. Okay. Honestly, I do not know where they are at. If I could have my babies back home right now, I would. I want them back. I want everybody back. That is the God's honest truth.
Figure out why there's two Chris's. Okay. We talked about that last night.
Yes.
We just can't figure it out. There's a Chris. Okay. If somebody asks me, like, routine, I'll say, that's the truth. So, it is very surprising to me, and it warms my heart that you're the type of dad who can pack a bag in the morning. You know just what to put in there. You know just what to put in there as a backup in case they have an accident. Okay? You know what the clothes to put in there. You know what they have for breakfast. You know what they have for a snack and a dinner and a nighttime snack. You can tell me the book you read to your daughters. Okay? I really love them. And you're not faking that, are you? That's real. Okay? There's a lot of guys that come in here and try to tell you that. And I know they're lying. Okay? Because they can't answer those questions that you can answer. But you weren't here today lying about something else. We need to talk about that, okay? That's his daughter. I know. And she's very good.
Yeah, I'm not proud of it. I didn't think anything like that could happen. I don't think I would ever do it, but I did. She accused me of it. I denied it. I she was hard, and I felt horrible for it. Like, she was pregnant, and it was, I don't want to, it didn't hurt her. I cheated on her, I hurt her emotionally. I cheated on her. And I feel absolutely horrible about this, but that's what I've been holding back. When I was at Nico's rugby game, I was with her. I was in that with her. Keep going. That 5 weeks I was alone, I was with her most of the time.
You're doing a good job. This is the Chris that I knew would come out today. This is the Chris who tells the truth because you're a truth teller.
Here is something that true crime cases almost never explore deeply enough. The house itself was a witness. When Nicole Atkinson arrived and the police officer conducted that welfare check, there were details inside that home, subtle, easy to overlook, that were screaming something was wrong. The sheets were gone from the bed. In their place was a bare mattress. The fitted sheet, the top sheet, the pillowcases, all of them had been removed and placed in the kitchen trash can. A detail that Nicole Kessinger even noticed on the FaceTime call from a completely different state. The energy of the house was wrong. A family of 4, a mother, 2 young children, and an unborn baby does not simply vanish and leave behind a purse, a phone, a set of car keys, and a car. Those things are not optional. Those things are not things a person forgets. A mother who is pregnant does not leave for a play date without her phone. She does not leave without her keys. She does not leave without her purse. And the girls, Bella and Celeste, had routines. They had a school. They had schedules. They had morning habits that any parent of young children would recognize as absolute constants. The absence of those routines in that specific way, on that specific morning, was a language all its own. The dog was there. The car was there. The phone was there. The keys were there. And the woman who had bought all of those things, who had made that house a home, who had documented every corner of that life on social media, she was gone, without a trace that she had chosen to leave. The house was already telling the truth. On that Monday afternoon, before anyone had found a single piece of forensic evidence, before any camera footage had been reviewed, Before any phone records had been pulled, the house on Saratoga Trail was already screaming. By the afternoon of August 15th, a drone was flying over the Survey 319 oil work site. Investigators had followed the digital trail, the phone data, the GPS data, the records of where Chris Watts had been on the morning of August 13th. They were looking at the right piece of ground. The drone spotted what investigators described as fresh movement of dirt consistent with a clandestine grave near the oil tanks. They also found a bedsheet near the property, a sheet with a pattern that matched the pillowcases and top sheet from the Watts family home. The same sheets that had been placed in the kitchen trash can. On August 16th, using an excavator, investigators retrieved Shanann's body from the ground. She had been buried in a shallow grave in the dirt of the oil field where her husband worked every day. She was still wrapped in what remained of the sheets he had taken from their bed. She was still wearing the clothes she had come home in from Arizona. She was 15 weeks pregnant, and she was alone in the ground of a place she had never even been to while she was alive. Bella and Celeste were found in the crude oil storage tanks. The tank openings were 8 inches wide. 8 inches. Those little girls, 3 years old and 4 years old, had been forced through 8-inch openings into tanks of crude oil at an industrial work site. The detail is almost too much to hold in the mind, and yet it must be held because it is the truth of what happened to them. Chris Watts was arrested that evening. He was fired by Anadarko Petroleum the same day. He was denied bail, and the man who had stood on his front lawn 2 days earlier asking the world to bring his family home was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 additional counts of murder of a child under the age of 12 while in a position of trust, 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. The Weld County District Attorney, Michael Rourke, would later stand in a courtroom and say this about the motive. Why did this have to happen? His motive was simple, Your Honor. He had a desire for a fresh start. A fresh start. 3 lives and 1 unborn child for the cost of a fresh start. In the hours just before his arrest, there is one more piece of footage that matters. Chris Watts was still speaking to law enforcement. He was still managing what he said and how he said it. But something in the footage of those final hours, something in his posture, in the quality of his stillness, tells you that a part of him already knew it was over. He had spent 2 days holding the structure of his lie upright, and the structure was coming down. Watch how a man looks when his story is collapsing and he can feel it, even if he has not admitted it yet.
We'll be in the area. Okay. So Chris, I might need your help a little bit. Okay. Where is, I'm assuming your wife Sherry's in bed with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a look in there and then talk to your kids. Does she have any dirty laundry that hasn't been touched by anybody else besides her? Okay. Is any of your laundry in there with it? Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, I just think it's a family. It's gonna happen. How about your kids' room?
So their laundry would be in the...
And has any of it been touched by you today?
I'll put it in there.
You put it in there?
Yeah.
How about dirty laundry?
This is the dirty laundry here.
Okay. You usually pick it up off the floor and put it in there?
Yep.
Beds? Have you touched their beds today?
I made them.
You made them. Okay. Do you like pick up the pillow, that kind of stuff, or do you just like? Okay. Let me think here.
Sure. Let me see. Anything that...
Anything about
nothing I've ever touched at all.
How about actually shoes would be good too? Shoes that maybe you haven't touched since they've worn them? Is there cleaning?
Yeah, they didn't. But sometimes the blankies get put in there.
Okay.
And that's the one she usually uses, the butterfly one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you touched it today?
Yesterday when I put it on the bed.
Okay. Shoes?
Shoes are downstairs.
Okay. And probably your wife's shoes too.
Sophie's shoes and Bella's shoes on this side.
Okay. What's the most recent picture you remember her wearing?
Probably outside because they were wet from a pool party.
Okay.
Does that still work?
What day was that?
That was on Saturday.
Okay.
Those are two right there.
Put them up on the chair?
Call, one's going to be from KOA,
I put them
another
up
one
in
is
the
going to
dry.
be CIO request, and it's going to be the Denver
And everything got wet, right? They were in there.
The arc of Christopher Watts from August 13th to November 6th, 2018, is one of the most documented psychological unravelings in the history of modern true crime. And it is worth tracing because it tells you something important about how people who are capable of this level of deception operate and how they ultimately fall apart. In the early hours of August 13th, Chris Watts was in control. He was organized. He was methodical. He loaded his truck. He drove to the work site. He went to work. He answered calls. He texted his mistress. On the afternoon of August 13th, he was still performing. He talked to the police officer. He talked to Nicole Atkinson. He gave the interview to the Denver 7 camera crew on his front lawn. He smiled. He appealed. He cried, though tears from him seemed to arrive and depart with suspicious efficiency. By August 15th, the confidence was cracking. The polygraph failure was a fracture he could not control. And in the interrogation room, for the first time, the mask began to slip. He shifted his story. He threw a new version of events at investigators, Shanann attacking the girls, because he needed something to hold on to, something to make him less than entirely responsible. By August 16th, he was in custody. The bodies had been found. There was no version of events left to construct. On November 6th, 2018, Christopher Lee Watts stood in a courtroom and pleaded guilty to all 9 charges against him. He did not go to trial. He accepted a plea deal that removed the death penalty from consideration. And then he was sentenced. The sentencing of Christopher Watts was the final public chapter of a case that had begun with a family's disappearance and ended with a man standing before a court, having destroyed every life he was supposed to protect. What you are about to hear from the prosecutor in this courtroom is not just a legal summation. It is a statement on behalf of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. Listen to what is said about motive. Listen to what is said about the victims. This is the moment the judicial system answered for what was done in that house on Saratoga Trail.
You would like to make on behalf of the prosecution? Yes, please.
Your Honor, there are no words to adequately describe the unimaginable tragedy that brings us before this court today. By my comments, I'm not even going to try to express the horror, the pain, or the suffering that the defendant has caused to these families, to this community, and to all who are a part of this investigation. However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how? Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this. The defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. Not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old. She had married the defendant in November of 2012. Over the weekend leading up to August 13th, she had been at a work conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and returned home in the early morning hours of August 13th. We know that she got home about 1:45 in the morning. The doorbell camera on their home shows her arriving back home from the airport. Shortly thereafter, at least according to the defendant, they had what he referred to as an emotional conversation about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward. What was said during that emotional conversation, only he knows. What we do know is that shortly after that, the defendant strangled her to death with his own hands. We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI. If that were the case, you would expect to see vicious, horrible bruising about her neck, shoulders, and face. You would expect to see the hyoid bone in her neck broken. You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. None of those are present. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. We know that our experts will tell us that it takes 2 to 4 minutes to strangle someone to death manually with their own hands. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable. Even worse, what must Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, must have experienced or thought as their father, the one man on this planet who was supposed to nurture and protect them, was snuffing out their lives. They both died from smothering. Let me say that again. The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Why? Imagine the horror in Bella's mind as her father took her last breaths away. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a 1.5 centimeter laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times before she died. She fought back for her life as her father smothered her. Celeste had no such injuries. In fact, she had no external injuries at all. But according to the medical examiner, she was smothered nonetheless. The defendant then methodically and calmly loaded their bodies into his work truck, not in a hasty or disorganized way. He was seen from the neighbor's doorbell camera backing his truck into the driveway, going back and forth into the house and back out to the truck 3 different times, 1 time for each of their bodies. He then drove them away from their family home 1 final time, intent on hiding any evidence of the crimes that he had just committed. In one final sign of callousness for his wife, his daughters, and their unborn son, and their remains, he drove them to a location that he thought no one would ever find them, to one of the oil tank batteries with which he was so familiar. He knew this was safe. He had texted a coworker the night before saying, "I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it." He had carefully ensured that he would be alone in the middle of the plains to secrete away the remains of his family in a place that he hoped they would never be found. In one final measure of disrespect for the family he once had, he ensured that they would not be together, even in death, or so he thought. He disposed of them in different locations. He buried Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave away from the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility. Different tanks, so these little girls wouldn't be together in death. Imagine this, Your Honor. This defendant took those little girls, and put them through a hatch at the top of an oil tank, 8 inches in diameter. Bella had scratches on her left buttocks from being shoved through this hole. A tuft of blonde hair was found on the edge of one of these hatches. The defendant told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CC's because of the sound that the splashes made. These were his daughters. Significantly, when his co-workers arrived at the tank battery later that morning, to a person, they all described him as acting completely normally. It was a normal workday, even while his daughters sank in the oil and water not far away from him. And then his efforts at deception truly began. We've all seen the emotionless interviews that the defendant gives to the local media, asking for help in locating his family. We watched as he claimed that the house was empty without them, and that he hoped that they were somewhere safe, and that he just wanted them to come home. He told investigators that they were at home sleeping when he left for work that morning, and that Shanann had told him that she was taking the girls to a friend's house for the day. What is striking about this case, Your Honor, beyond the horrors that I've already described to you, is the number of collateral victims that he created by his actions. While he stood in front of TV cameras asking for the safe return of his family, scores of law enforcement officers, neighbors, friends, and family scoured the area, fretted for their safe return. They texted him begging for any information and sending him their best wishes, all the while he hid what he had done. The list of indirect victims does not end there. Think of the firefighters and the Colorado State Patrol hazmat experts who had to don protective suits and who were called upon to pull Bella and Celeste out of those oil tanks. Or the coroner employees who had to conduct these autopsies.
Christopher Watts was sentenced to 5 life terms without the possibility of parole. 3 of those sentences to be served consecutively. He also received 48 years for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy, for the life of Nico Lee Watts, who never drew a single breath outside his mother's womb, and 12 years each for 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. He will never leave prison. He was transferred out of Colorado for his own safety and is now held at the Maximum Security Dodge Correctional Institute in Waupun, Wisconsin, where he will spend the rest of his natural life. This is the question that haunts this case more than any other. Not just, why did he do it? Because the why, while disturbing, is not entirely incomprehensible when you trace the architecture of a man who had spent years avoiding discomfort, avoiding confrontation, and allowing other people to carry the weight of his consequences. The more fascinating question is, what did Christopher Watts actually think was going to happen? He had a plan, or something close to one. He believed that if the bodies were hidden well enough, if the story was constructed carefully enough, if the performance was convincing enough, he could simply walk away from his old life and into a new one. He had already made the call to the school. He had already made the call to the real estate agent. He had already texted his girlfriend that his family was gone. He had a path mapped out in his mind, from the house on Saratoga Trail to a smaller place, a cleaner slate, a new chapter with a woman who believed he was already free. What he did not account for was Nicole Atkinson's instincts. He did not account for the neighbor's security camera. He did not account for a digital footprint that stretched across phone records, GPS data, internet searches, and cell tower pings. He did not account for the fact that Nicole Kessinger, the woman he was doing this for, would walk into a police station and tell investigators everything she knew. He underestimated almost everyone. He underestimated the investigators who reviewed his body language and knew something was wrong before they had a single piece of physical evidence. He underestimated the forensic teams who found the sheets, who found the grave, who found the tanks. He underestimated the power of a community that knew Shanann and could not believe she had simply vanished. He underestimated the love that the people around her had for her. And perhaps most of all, he underestimated Shanann herself. Because Shanann Watts was not a woman who vanished quietly. She was a woman who had documented her entire life, her entire family, her entire marriage on social media. That documentation became evidence. Her text messages became testimony. Her Facebook videos became the record of a marriage in decline, a husband who was emotionally withdrawing, a woman who was fighting harder than anyone around her knew. She had left a trail, not the dark kind, but one made of words and timestamps and recorded moments that told the truth about her life, even when she was no longer there to tell it herself. In February 2019, Watts gave a 5-hour prison interview. He told investigators that every time he opened his phone and saw a picture of Shanann and the girls during the summer of 2018, he questioned what he was doing. He said it felt like a roller coaster he could not get off. He said those words to FBI agents while sitting in a prison in Wisconsin, sentenced to die behind those walls. The roller coaster, Chris, is still running. It is just running without you on it. Here is the through line of this entire case. Here is the theme that connects every clip, every call, every lie, every moment of footage you have seen. From the second that neighbor's security camera captured him loading that truck in the dark, the truth was already trying to come out. Every piece of evidence in this case was the truth, breaking through a surface that Chris Watts was desperately trying to keep sealed. The surveillance footage was the truth speaking. Nicole Atkinson standing on that front porch with a feeling she could not name. That was the truth speaking through instinct. Nicole Kessinger noticing the missing sheets on a FaceTime call. That was the truth leaking through the smallest detail. The school that received a phone call saying the girls would not be coming back. That was the truth hiding in plain sight. The real estate agent who was already being asked to list a home whose owners were not yet even missing. That was the truth begging to be noticed. And in that interrogation room, when the polygraph machine registered what the investigators already suspected, that was the truth finally breaking the surface. Because you can construct a lie. You can dress it, rehearse it, perform it under pressure. But the body has its own memory, and the evidence has no reason to cooperate with a story that did not happen. By the time Chris Watts sat in that courtroom on November 6th, 2018, the truth had won. It had fought through 2 days of deception, through a grieving performance on a front lawn, through a rehearsed interrogation, through a falsified timeline, through a manipulated relationship, through every digital breadcrumb and physical trace that a methodically planned cover story had tried to suppress. It had won, and it will always win. Christopher Watts is currently 50 years old. He is housed at Dodge Correctional Institute in Waupun, Wisconsin, a maximum security facility. He was moved there from Colorado because of safety concerns related to the nature of his crimes. Reports from sources close to the case describe him as isolated, spending his days in prayer and Bible reading, described by some who have followed his prison correspondence as miserable. He has continued to write letters from prison. In those letters, he has reportedly made efforts to deflect blame, to reframe his own role in what happened, to attribute responsibility to other forces and other people. Investigators and analysts who have studied his behavior throughout this case say this is consistent with the psychological profile of a person who has never developed the capacity to fully accept accountability for their own actions. The family home at 2825 Saratoga Trail was sold in October 2024 for $650,000. A price that reflected what real estate professionals call a murder house discount, a reduction in value tied to the history of violence associated with the property. The new owners began a new chapter inside those walls. The neighborhood that was once associated with a missing family, a television plea, and a devastating discovery has continued its quiet suburban life. Shanann's family, her parents, Frank and Sandra Ruzasek, and her brother Frankie, have continued to live with the loss that no family should ever have to bear. They have spoken publicly about the ongoing harassment from conspiracy theorists who, in a disturbing and inexplicable pattern, have targeted them with doubt and cruelty rather than compassion. They have asked, repeatedly, to be allowed to grieve in peace, to be allowed to remember Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico with dignity. The legacy of this case has extended beyond the family. It has been cited in discussions about domestic violence awareness, about the patterns that precede family annihilation, about the ways in which financial pressure and emotional unavailability and secret keeping can combine into something catastrophic. Shanann's name is now associated with legislative conversations about the recognition of unborn children in murder charges. Conversations that Nico's brief, unfinished life helped to shape. Nicole Kessinger, for her part, has largely disappeared from public life. Her cooperation with investigators was considered instrumental in the prosecution. She changed her name and relocated. She was, in the final analysis, another person who was deceived. Not a victim in the same category as Shanann and the girls, but someone who was handed a manufactured reality and believed it, and who ultimately did the right thing when the manufactured reality collapsed. And so we are back to where we started. A man on a front lawn, a camera, a plea, a performance so carefully constructed that millions of people watching it in real time could not decide what to believe. Here is the question I want to leave you with. Not about Chris Watts. We know what he did, and we know where he is, and we know where he will remain. The question I want to leave you with is about the rest of us. How often do we look at a perfect family and take it at face value? How often do we look at a social media page full of smiles and believe that those smiles are the whole story? How often do we look at a cooperative, calm, charming man and assume that cooperation and calm and charm are evidence of innocence? The people closest to this case, the investigators, the friends, the colleagues, they knew. Not all at once. Not with certainty. But something was wrong, and something in them registered it, even before the evidence confirmed it. Nicole Atkinson felt at the moment Shanann did not respond to a text. An FBI agent named Tammy Lee felt it watching a television interview. Nicole Kessinger felt at the moment she saw a bare mattress on a FaceTime call. Trust that instinct. That instinct has a name. And in this case, it had a badge and a phone and a doorbell it was willing to ring until someone answered. For Shanann, for Bella, for Celeste, for Nico. Their names are the most important part of this entire story. Not the man who took them. Not the lie he built around their absence. Them. This has been Dark Trail Files. If you made it to the end of this video, you are exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Subscribe if you have not already. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story told the right way. And leave a comment below. I read every single one of them. The trail does not go cold here. We'll be back.